If you're going to buy and hold real estate, for God's sakes, do multifamily. It's so much safer.
If you don't have a target, if you're not aiming for something very specific, you're absolutely not going to hit it.
It's the people that take massive action that don't sit and get caught in analysis paralysis. It's so important that you pay attention to who you hang out with, because you show me your 3 best friends, I'll show you who you are. Yeah, I mean, we go through every aspect of the business, from building a team to selecting a market, what to look for in a market, to how to evaluate a property, how to find properties, how to build relationships, how to do the due diligence on those properties so you don't make a mistake, how to finance them, how to syndicate, how to joint venture, even how to property manage. And if you know me, I spend a good bit of time on mindset.
You're listening to Copeland Morgan Media, your source for investment property analysis, education, and advice. Find us online at copelandmorgan.com. Well, welcome back, folks, and thanks for listening. I'm your host, Jeff Copeland, and I'm super excited to have in the studio with me today real estate legend Rod Khleif. And I know for many of you listening, he probably needs no introduction. Rod is a real estate investor, a mentor, a coach. He's the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate podcast, and he's the author of several books on real estate, including How to Create Lifetime Cash Flow Through Multifamily Properties. Rod is also the founder of Multifamily Mastery, a series of bootcamp style training conferences, which we'll certainly dive into shortly. Before we do, I want to let everyone know that today's episode is brought to you by Redding & Associates, real estate attorneys in Tampa, Florida. As real estate investors, many of us struggle with the concept of asset protection. How do we structure our LLCs and our property ownership to protect them all from lawsuits and other liabilities? John Redding is a friend of the show, and he has all the answers. You can find more at jrtampalaw.com. Rod, welcome. A lot has changed since we last saw each other at your Tampa boot camp in 2019. That was BC, before COVID.
Yeah, actually, I remember I had 800 people slated for Orlando early in right when COVID hit. I was freaking out because we had a bunch of those tickets sold, and like, what are we going to do? And so I had to innovate, and I was one of the first people to go virtual. I built a studio at my compound, and we had a huge turnout, and I actually enjoyed it. And a little rough because I've had thousands of people now come to my virtual boot camps, and the only complaint we get is that the breaks are too short, because I basically turned 3 days into 2 days, so I'm not killing myself. But yeah, no, it was a little stressful, but I was able to pull it out, and we really didn't have anybody upset. We gave them access to the next live event, and it just turned out really well. So.
Yeah, it certainly seems like you kind of made lemonades out of lemon there, and I definitely want to dive into your boot camps and what they're all about and who they're for. But first, I'd love to dive into sort of your origin story, which I know a little bit of, having attended some of your events. But they say it's best to learn from other people's mistakes rather than repeating them yourself. And you have a fascinating backstory, which includes sort of a rags to riches and then back again story. And that's one of the things I like about you. You're not shy about sharing your mistakes and helping other people learn from them. So let's dive into that. Where did you come from? How did you end up where you are today?
Sure. Well, we'll go way back. I immigrated to this country when I was 6 years old with my brother Albert, my mother's Vantje. I was born in the Netherlands, in Holland. Wooden shoes, windmills, and we ended up in Denver, Colorado, where I lived for 30 years. And when we first got there, we really struggled. I will tell you that I remember the food we got was from an expired food store. We drank powdered milk because that's what we had with our cereal in the morning, and I'll tell you, it sounds a lot better than it is. And I wore clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school, until I lied about my age at Burger King and worked there when I was 14, so I could buy my own clothes and then ultimately buy a car. I know other people have had it harder than we did, but that was a real kind of eye-opener for me, and I realized I wanted more. And luckily, my mom had an incredible work ethic, so she babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And with her babysitting money, she was a bit of an entrepreneur, so she invested in the stock market successfully, and she also started investing in real estate. Her first real estate acquisition was the house right across the street. Bought it from a family named the Jules. She paid about $30,000 for it when I was 14. when I was 17, she told me she'd made $20,000 in her sleep. And I'm like, what? You made 20 grand, you didn't do anything? I said, Mom, screw college, I'm getting into real estate. So I went out and got my real estate broker's license right when I turned 18, which back then you could do with education. They got smart, now you need some experience before you can actually be a broker and have your own office. But I was a broker right when I turned 18. And I was going to be rich in real estate. Well, my first year in real estate, I made about 8 to 10 grand. Keep in mind, this is 44 years ago.
So, yeah, that's not bad for an 18-year-old.
Right.
Well, then, yeah.
Well, it wasn't great. But my second year, 10 to 12 grand. But my third year, I made well over $100,000, which back in 1980 was pretty decent money. And so, what I like to talk about is, what happened between year 2 and year 3 that caused me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was I met a guy, I was actually dating his daughter, that taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology, and how truly 80 to 90% of your success in anything is just that, your mindset and your psychology. Only 10 to 20% is the mechanical knowledge, whatever the vehicle is you're using to build wealth. And, if it was just the mechanical knowledge, there'd be a bunch of wealthy librarians and college professors out there. It's the do and it's the keep doing. And, fast forward to today, I've owned over 2,000 houses that I rented long term, thousands of apartment units. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And, and you're like, oh, wow. And I was like, oh, wow. And I got a big head, and I thought I was a freaking real estate god. And, you do the math on it, it's like $8,300 an hour. And, of course, I did. And anybody that holds still long enough heard about it. And, when you get a big head like that, sometimes God or the universe will give you a nice little smackdown. Well, that was 2008 for me. I lost everything. I lost $50 million conservatively in 2008. And so, one of the things I'm known for on my podcast and at my boot camps is talking about the mindset component, the mindset it took to have 50 million to lose in the first place, but then, maybe more importantly, or certainly as importantly, is the mindset it took to recover from losing, $50 million. And so, we can drill down as deep as you like on that. So
yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by it and would love to. I love something you said there about that from year 2 to year 3 tends to be the launching point for a lot of people, because as you know, we are also a real estate brokerage here in St. Pete. We also do property management, but we get a lot of real estate agents who some are new to the business, or some are transitioning from another business or from another brokerage. And I always tell them, real estate, whether you're an agent, a broker, or an investor, it's a get-rich-slow scheme. And if you come here and you need a commission check to pay your car payment next month, maybe this isn't the time for you. But if you come through that door and you're willing to sort of follow the steps and follow the program and follow a system for those first 2 years, very often it's that year 3 launch that happens, because all the things we do to generate leads tend to be sort of a drip, 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 and then they become a trickle. And then after a few years, they become sort of a flow, and you've got this steady stream of potential, deals and investments, or, depending on what you're doing. Do you find that as a similar parallel across other folks who you've mentored and coached, and across, your team and in other industries?
No, respectfully, no. I've got students that do it in a year. And in my case, I could see in your example how that might be the case. You've got to build momentum. In my case, it was really a mindset shift. I mean, it was just an about face. It was recognizing that if I put my total focus and attention on success and take massive freaking action, you pretty much become unstoppable. And that was my scenario. But that said,
well, that's why I love doing this. It's the different perspectives and the different experiences.
No, I can totally get it as it relates to real estate sales. I know, of course, I know a lot about it because I was a broker for a period of time. But when I 10x my income, it was really more around actually starting to acquire assets. So I started my shtick was I started knocking on doors of people that were in foreclosure. I'd be knock knock knock. Hey, it's Rod Khleif. I saw you having some trouble with at the time. A big one was Countrywide Funding, and I help people when they're in this situation. And so I got a lot of listings that way. I bought property that way, and ultimately. I ended up buying 500 houses in Denver, which I wish the hell I still had now. Good Lord, they'd be free and clear. I'd be on the back of my yacht. But anyway, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But Yeah, no, it was for me. It was a mindset. It wasn't a timing thing. I've got students that have retired after 2 years from very high paying, W-2 jobs. Something I'm real proud of is, I've been teaching about 4 years, and my students now in somewhere that I know of between 52 and 55,000 units, and I'm super proud of that. I mean, I'm probably most proud of that next to my kids. And so, we've got, but what's interesting is, as it relates back to your comment about agents that come in here, it's the people that take massive action, that don't sit and get caught in analysis paralysis, that don't get caught up in focusing on the negative, that keep the naysayers out of their life, that get around people that want more, that aren't going to poo-poo their dreams, and all of that has an impact on this, and the ones that really clearly define what it is they want and why they want it. And if you come to one of my boot camps, as you know, because you came to one, the first thing we do is goal setting, and we do it on steroids. And why? Because you've got to want it. Like Napoleon Hill says in his book Think and Grow Rich, you've got to have a burning desire. And why do you need a burning desire? Because that's how you push through that analysis by paralysis, the fear, the limiting beliefs, all these things that hold people back, or even comfort. Comfort holds people back. Comfort zone's a warm place, and we all know nothing freaking grows there. So you've got to have that burning desire. You've got to know what it is you want with clarity. You've got to know why you want it, because it's the why that drives you. And that's why that's the first thing we do, because how are you going to get anything if you don't know what it is? So it's those components, and there's more obviously, but those are the big ones. I think knowing what you want, having a peer group that supports you, and that's why my Warrior program, those were my mentorship coaching students I was just talking about. Everybody praises each other and validates each other and helps each other and lifts each other up. There's no naysayers, there's no negativity allowed, frankly, but we don't get it anyway. But the point is, it's so important that you pay attention to who you hang out with, because you show me your 3 best friends, I'll show you who you are, okay? And you are, who you hang out with is who you become. So, that's a big component, the peer group, the goals, and then just push massive action. People are fearful, but action mitigates fear. And so, there's a few things that I talk about a lot.
Sure. Well, it doesn't take a genius to understand that if you don't have a target, if you're not aiming for something very specific, you're absolutely not going to hit it. That's more or less guaranteed. And I love what you said about knowing what you're aiming for is important. But even that's only half the battle, if that much, because it's the why that drives you. Why do you want it? Right. And that's what makes you get out of bed every morning and kind of grind. So, and you mentioned one of my favorite or most hated, I can't decide, terms, which is analysis paralysis. And I see people all the time in this business. They're gung-ho, they're eager, they want to take down a property, they put in an offer, they get into due diligence, and then they get stuck because they can't see the vision, they can't see the future, they can't see the next steps. They only see what is there, sitting there in front of them in a home inspection report or whatever the case may be. So, I will tell you this about people that are analytical. They're probably the biggest group of people that are successful in my business in multifamily, because multifamily is primarily empirical. It's numbers. If you get the numbers right, so if you're not analytical and you're interested in this business, you need to align with someone that is, like I have. Okay, so my first partner was a CPA, and my new partner also is extremely analytical. And I mean, they're both guys you can throw in a room with a spreadsheet and throw raw meat in once in a while, and they're happy. And so, that's a critical component of this. But what we see, and I see it with my students all the time, is they are the most successful, but they're the hardest to get to take take action. They've got to check off every little box. And so what I would say to you, if you are one of those people that's super analytical, is recognize that, we can drive all the way across the country at night with only seeing 50 feet in front of us with our headlights, and we know we're going to make it. We could encounter obstacles, but you've got to take that first step. You don't have to see the whole road, and that's the thing. An analytical person needs to see the whole road, and they have to get past that, because you can't. And like Dr. Martin Luther King said, you're relevant to this location, that you're you take that first step in faith, and the next step will be revealed. And Lao Tzu, thousands of years ago, said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with that single step, and that first step's very often the hardest. We see it in, I'm sure you see it with buyers, and
and people in this business, that first deal is the hardest. I know I see it with my students. It's the most scary. It's the most stressful. It takes the longest. But then, I see it with them. It might take 6 months, sometimes even up to upwards of a year. But after that, a few months later, they've got 5 or 6 deals going. I'm like, what the hell just happened?
It gets addictive after you land
when
that
you
first
recognize
one.
it's not that hard.
And you punch through the fear and you realize that wasn't so terrible. That wasn't scary at all. That was fun.
That's right.
Gary Wilson, who was on the show a few weeks ago, he had an interesting parallel to that. He said, through that door right there may be 10 other doors of opportunity, but you will never, ever see them until you walk through that first door. And so, punching through that analysis paralysis is one of the things that we really focus on and try to educate people to eliminate some of the fear, because usually it's fear of the unknown or fear of uncertainty. So after 2008, you're down on your luck. You lost $50 million, and you said that's a conservative number. Well, here we are, 15 years later? Where did you go from there? How did you build it back?
Well, rather than talking about the mechanics of how I did it, which I'm happy to do, but let's talk about the mindset it took. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That seems to be a real driver for you. So I want to hear more about that.
It's a driver for everybody.
Sure.
Honestly, it's the secret sauce. Again, you can, like right now I'm hiring an analyst, and he was only an intern so far in his previous job in analysis, but I'm going to hire him because all I've heard is his incredible work ethic and his passion and his hunger for this. When I hear that, the rest of the stuff will work itself out. Okay, so for me, again, when I lost everything, how I got it back was reassociating with what I wanted. It would have been very easy for me to focus on loss, and unfortunately, it's a human nature to gravitate towards the negative. We connect through negativity. For example, if you came up to me and said, "Hey Rod, how you doing?" and I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm fantastic. Life is amazing." You take a couple steps back and say, "Rod's off his freaking meds." But if you came up and said, "How you doing?" I said, "Oh dude, my back is freaking killing me. Oh, I've got this and this going on."
Yeah, you can always identify with that.
And then you'll put your arm around me and go, "Oh, I feel you, brother." And that's the problem though, because we connect through negative. And so, what I had to do back then was I had to reassociate on what it is that I wanted with clarity. And so, one of the things that I do, like I said, is I take people through that workshop. And, I could take a few minutes and describe it for someone that's not interested in coming to boot camp, if you like.
Absolutely. We're not short on time, so let's dive into it.
Let's do that. So, if you can take if you're listening or watching, if you can take some notes, I think you'll be glad you did. You could also actually ping me on any social channel and just say, send me the goal setting link, because I did this on January 1st with music, and you get a guide you can download. And I'm not trying to sell you anything, I just give you the information. But I took people through this process. It's really professionally done. It's nice. It was on my official Facebook page. But again, if you DM me I'm on every social channel. They've even got me on freaking TikTok now. So
just and we can put a link in the show notes. I'm assuming to your goal setting.
If you remind me, I can have my team send it up there too. But anyway, but let me describe the process. I can do it in about 5 minutes, and I think it'll add value because it's something I think you should do. If you're married with a spouse, you should do it with a partner, kids, if they're over 12 years old, should do it, just because it gives clarity to what it is that you want. So you sit down when you've got an uninterrupted hour. Make sure you're well hydrated. Don't do it right after a meal. You need a lot of energy, and just sit down and write down everything you could ever want in life. Okay, not just the stuff, but stuff for sure. Start with stuff: houses, cars, boats, jet skis, planes, whatever it is. But here's the important piece. Take the lid off your brain and imagine that if you write it down, you're going to get it, because that's not outside the realm of reality. Because what it does is it triggers something in your brain called your reticular activating system. And it's this subconscious filter. You're not aware of it consciously, but your brain points you in the direction of what it thinks you're interested in. And probably the best example is when you first buy a car. You never really noticed them before, then you buy the car, they're everywhere. Were they there before? Of course they were. That's your reticular activating system, and it works like that for your goals. So just writing them down is critical. If you're analytical and you're like, "Oh, I'll just think about them." No, if you're in your head, you're dead. You got to write them down. So start there. Write everything down, and don't limit yourself. There's nothing you can't do, be, or have. So, if you want a private island, a jet, a yacht, write it down, because it starts the process. I'll give you an extreme example of this in a minute. So you're writing all this stuff down. Write down how much money you want in cash flow from your assets in 3 years, and again in 10 years. Write down how much money you want in the bank in 3 years, and say in 10 years. Write down also all the things you want to do in this lifetime. So, if you want to write a book, the places you want to travel. I've got a friend that's climbing every mountain over 14,000 feet. I think he's done them all, actually. And then, example for me is I jumped out of a perfectly good airplane just north of here a while back. I spent a couple years now, but I'll never freaking do it again. But it's done. but bucket list items as well. Also write down what you want to learn in this lifetime. If you want to learn a foreign language, write that down. So it's everything. It's not just the stuff, and it's not just the news resolutions that statistically are forgotten by the middle of February. This is a life plan. People spend more time planning their frickin' birthday party than they do designing their lives. This is designing your life. So you write down all that stuff, everything you want to learn. If you want to learn multifamily, for God's sakes, come spend a couple days with me. I've got a boot camp coming up March 12th and 13th. It's virtual, online. And I'll give you a code right now that you can literally come. I don't sell anything at my boot camps, by the way. Even the live ones, I don't sell anything at this point. And so, but my virtual one coming up March 12th and 13th is 2 full days, 16 to 18 hours of training, nothing being sold. And I'll give you a code. You can come for $97. So the code is RODFRIEND, as one word, RODFRIEND. And the website is multifamilyvirtualbootcamp.com. Or you can text my name, Rod, to 72345, and we'll send you that link. But anyway, remember the code RODFRIEND. So anyway, it's kind of a duh if you're interested in this business at all, because it's, like I say, 16 to 18 hours of training, nothing being sold. So, and I've never had a complaint. Like I was telling you this before we started recording, and, the only complaint I ever get is the breaks are too short because I'm trying to pack so much stuff in, literally with thousands of people attending, because we always send a survey afterwards, and people absolutely freaking love it. But the point is, if you want to learn something, write it down. And then lastly, and maybe one of the most important pieces of this is write down things that you want to do for other people. Like my parents, when my dad was alive, I bought him a house here on a canal in Port Charlotte, here in Florida. I took him on cruises, bought him a car. If there's someone you want to do something for, and here's why this is important, because again, this is the fuel to get you to take action. We'll do more for others than we'll ever do for ourselves. And so you want to come up with all these things to create that burning desire, to get you to push through that fear and that analysis paralysis and to take action. All right, so once you can't think of another thing, a couple more steps. Write down, put a number by each goal, how long it's going to take you to achieve it, just how many years. And again, don't overthink this. Just guess 1 year, 3 years, 5, 10, even 20. Recognizing that as human beings, it's a natural tendency for us to overestimate what we can do in a year and massively underestimate what we can do in 5, 10, 20 years. And so I'll give you an example of this. When I was 18, we lived in Denver, but I knew I wanted to live on a beach, and there's no beach in Denver, obviously. And so I would visualize palm trees and sand and surf and waves and 22 years later, I built this incredible, $8 million, 10,000 square foot mansion down here on Casey Key in Sarasota, which was unthinkable when I was 18. I mean, I owned the beach on one side, I had my boats on the backside. It was called a Gulf to Bay. And so again, I'm not trying to brag. I want to hopefully inspire anybody listening to this that truly anything is possible. You just have to make a decision and take action. And so again, once you've got your a number by each goal, then pick your number one goal. I mean, that goal, when you get it, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. You've arrived when you achieve that goal. So put that down. Then pick your top 3 1-year goals and put those down and leave some room in between them. And at this point, you're ahead of 99.9% of people on the planet that, again, like I said, spend more time planning Christmas than they do their life. And so, but there's one more step, and actually 2 more steps. One, I want you to write down why each one of those goals is an absolute freaking must to achieve, okay? And use emotionally charged words. Words are very powerful when you're writing your description. Words like incredible and amazing and beautiful. And so you might say, I can show my kids what incredible abundance looks like, what amazing success looks like. So I can show my wife or husband what it means to have a life of unbelievable freedom, freedom to do whatever we want, whenever we want, wherever we want, bring whoever we want, whatever's going to juice you, write that down. And put one on, put a little paragraph under each goal. There may be some redundancy between them, but that's okay. Put a why underneath each goal, a couple sentences. And then once you're done with that, I want you to take it just a little step further and put some pain in there if you don't achieve the goal, and make it freaking hurt, okay, if you don't achieve this goal, even the big one, so I don't feel like a failure. so I don't fail my kids, so I don't fail my wife, or so I don't live a life of regret. There was this nurse in Australia named Bronnie Ware. She was a hospice nurse, so she took care of patients when they were about to die. And she asked him a question. You know what the question was? It was, do you have any regrets? And wrote a book about it. It's called The 5 Regrets of Dying. You know what the number one regret was? It was not living the life I could have lived, living someone else's life, not doing what I know I'm capable of. And I can't think of anything worse than that. So if you fear failure, I'm going to tell you, fear regret much worse, okay? And, as an entrepreneur and any business owner, we fail our way to success. I've built 27 businesses so far in my life. I couldn't believe it when I counted them up not that long ago. 27. Several have been worth tens of millions of dollars. Most, I call them seminars instead of failures. Most have been spectacular, flaming seminars. But, again, an entrepreneur or a business owner or an investor is like a shark. We only die if we stop swimming, okay? And I call them seminars because you only fail if you don't get back up or you don't get the lesson. And so, anyway, so you've got your positive and negative reasons why, and the last thing is just go out and get pictures of your goals. Okay, go on Google, look at pictures that type in, and there's tons of images there, and just if something resonates with you, get pictures of it, have them blown up. I'll give you some examples of this, powerful examples, like the actor Jim Carrey, the comedian, wrote himself a check for $10 million when he was flat broke, and he used to go sit up by the Hollywood sign. He'd look at it and visualize cashing it, and that's how much money he made for Dumb and Dumber. I'll give you a more recent example. Demi Lovato, the singer, when she was unknown, 11, 12 years ago, posted on social media, one day I'm going to sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. I think it was 2 or 3 Super Bowls ago. Go see who sang it. I'll give you some personal examples from me. When I first got my broker's license, I figured I had to get a 4-door car. So I got this bone friggin' ugly Ford Granada, real piece of crap, bench seat in the front.
I know the car.
Yeah, well, that's what I had. Silver, just piece of crap.
I think my uncle had one.
Yeah, but then the guy I worked for, I was just telling you about, had 2 Corvettes, and I was dating his daughter, so let me drive one. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I got a picture out of a magazine. You couldn't even spell internet yet. Nobody thought of it yet. And I put that picture on the visor of my bone ugly Granada, and within a year or two I had a Corvette. I'll give you a couple more examples. Please, let me just preface this by saying I'm not bragging. I just want to inspire you. Replace the examples I'm giving with whatever it is you want. But that was when the TV show Magnum PI was out. The actor's name was Tom Selleck. He was a detective in Hawaii, I think, and it was the first time I saw an exotic car because he drove a Ferrari 308, beautiful red Ferrari, and I'm like, holy shit, that is incredible. So I got a picture of that actual car, put on the visor of my Corvette. A year or two, I had a Maserati look just like it. And last example, I'm the guy that always wanted a Lamborghini. Had pictures in my room growing up, and what's interesting is my son collected models of exotic cars, and I actually have the model on my desk at home. He had about 40 models, McLarens and Ferraris and Porsches, and he had a Lamborghini. He had the exact same color and style I ended up with, which is interesting, but which I wrecked. But anyway, so get pictures, put them around you, and it's incredibly powerful. Even if they just get into your subconscious, they work. And do vision boards. I've got my planner here, for example, in the back of this thing. I've got pictures that have been in here for 20 years. And what's interesting is I've gotten just about every single thing. But the first pictures are my gratitude pictures. My kids are 30 and 26, and this is when they were young. Everything starts from a place of gratitude. That's how you manifest everything you want in life. So they've got my gratitude pictures. Then I've got pictures of stuff that I wanted. This top picture looks just like the house I built on KCK.
Actually, turn it around just a little bit there.
Oh, sure. So again, gratitude pictures there. And then here's this looks just like the picture. It looks just like the view from my house on the beach. I had 10-foot high glass like that. I had travertine floors. This looks just like the compound I live in now. I live in a compound. I've got 6 buildings. I've got a big main house. I've got a 2-bedroom guest house on the water. I've got a media building. I've got, we just put a video studio in. It looks just like, it's just crazy, uncanny. This is before I had this stuff. And then, stupid crap like watches. I've got a few $100,000 worth of watches. The Lamborghini, before I ever got it, mine was black, but then a Lamborghini, the Rolls Royce, the Bentley. Again, I got all this stuff because I had pictures. Now, I'm not saying this is what you want, and you may not have any interest in this at all, but it works. So
I love the fact that you still carry them around, and they're laminated.
Oh yeah,
magazine
you can see.
covers.
I mean,
this
they're
is
dirty.
the real
I need
deal,
to clean
folks.
them off. I mean, they're filthy. There's one in here that I did not get yet, which is the 6-pack. Okay, the 6-pack abs. But I will get it, and I think it's under this layer of fat here. But anyway.
No, a couple of great nuggets there. I mean, failure is nothing to fear. It's a part of life. And if you pick yourself up and keep going, it can be one of the most powerful learning experiences available to you ever. So don't be afraid of failure. Attack it.
Let me give you an example. I met the billionaire owner of Spanx, Sarah Blakely, beautiful human being, but that's the women's undergarments. She started with $5,000, and I think she just made a few billion selling it. But I met her at a mastermind. And she told me that her dad used to ask her and her brother on a weekly basis, what have you failed at this week? Isn't that an awesome question to ask your kids?
Is, yeah.
I love that. Anyway, I just wanted to expand on that.
Yeah, well, and I think the other, the thing I like about you is you don't just talk about the pictures of your Ferraris and things. You carry them around with you, and it's the real deal. And the other thing is, no one can tell you that it's not possible, because you came here, you started this journey as an immigrant working at McDonald's when you were 14. So
Burger King, but yeah.
Sorry, Burger King. The big difference. I mean,
not really, but yeah.
But to go from there along this fascinating and successful journey, and with some failures along the way, is a really great story. So thank you for sharing.
Most entrepreneurs have had these failures. It's not a straight line. If you're a boater or you have a plane, a pilot, you're off course. If you're going somewhere, you're off course 90% of the time. But you end up at the right destination if you stay focused on what it is you want, and very often you have to change your approach. And if that approach doesn't work, you stay focused on what you want and you change your approach again. And like I said, when COVID hit, I had to innovate and pivot and change my approach very quickly. In fact, when you go to Multifamily Virtual Bootcamp, I think pretty sure that the video there is still my happy ass on my phone, recording it on my phone, because it was like, man, we got to get this going like right now. So I'm pretty sure we haven't changed that out. It's still there, because and I did, and very often you have to do that, especially with with all the craziness going on with COVID and stuff. A lot of people have had to innovate and reinvent and. And so the key here is not to get paralyzed in fear, but to just do whatever you have to do to innovate yourself. And like Peter Drucker said, any business is nothing but marketing and innovation, constantly looking at ways to improve and change when necessary. So.
Yeah, and another great nugget along those lines about making course corrections, a wise man by the name of Bob McDougald once told me that the more often you do that, the more you're tracking your progress to your goals, the smaller the corrections that you have to make. It's kind of like that trip to the moon. They were making corrections every 30 seconds, but if they went 2,000 kilometers off track, it would have been a huge, burn to get them back to straight. So figure out what you want, figure out why you want it, and then track your progress towards getting there. I think are some of the very simple, but not always so easy to implement secrets to success in a lot of different walks of life.
They are easy to implement unless you think they aren't easy to implement. It really is. So many people are in a box.
And that's what I meant by that. There's always something out there to distract you.
Yeah.
If you're willing to go down that rabbit hole, there's no shortage of them. And so just keeping focused is the key.
Another one, listen, if someone's watching or listening to your podcast, they're a leader. There's no question. And the world right now needs leaders more than ever. And right now more than ever, don't get me started on the fake news, but you've got to pay attention to what you're consuming, okay? And so you have to stand guard at the door to your mind. And there's so much crap out there right now. You have to bring in the good stuff. Like on my podcast, I do a clip every week called Own Your Power. It's motivational. It's like 5 minutes. And my podcast, by the way, is called Lifetime Cash Flow. We just broke 12 million downloads, which I'm super proud of. Thank you.
That's a huge milestone.
Yeah, thank you. And so... And part of it is because I think of those clips. And so even if it's not my motivational content, go on YouTube. There's so much good stuff out there. Just, I don't watch the news anymore. Sometimes I'll go online just to see what the headlines are, but it's so much of it is crap that just pay attention to that, because you need to be positive as a leader. And even if you're just a leader of your family, people are watching you. And you need to lead by example. And that means you have to maintain your attitude and your perspective and your focus right now more than ever.
That's a really interesting thought, and I'd love to do some kind of survey. But if you talk to 100 successful people, and by successful, I mean people who are out there chasing their dreams, whatever their success may be, I would be willing to bet that 80% of them do not spend 2 hours per day watching the news, because that's not productive, and it's not going to get you any closer to your goals. It's just going to fill your head with negativity, and that's a really interesting observation.
Yeah.
So let's finish with the boot camps. Prior to 2019, they were live events. I attended one in Tampa in 2019. I believe it was 2.5 or 3 days. And since COVID, you've sort of consolidated that into a 2-day online format. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. It's virtual. It's online. You do it in your underwear in front of your laptop, but it's interactive. I mean, it's live. It's brutal on me. I faceplant on the third day, but it's 16 to 18 hours of training. Again, I don't sell anything there, and if you use that Rod Friend code, you can come for $97 and. Just like I say, text the word multifamily to text Rod to 72345 and we'll get you the link. But yeah, I mean, we go through every aspect of the business, from building a team to selecting a market, what to look for in a market, to, how to evaluate a property, how to find properties, how to build relationships, how to do the due diligence on those properties so you don't make a mistake, how to finance them, how to syndicate, how to joint venture, even how to property manage. And if you know me, I spend a good bit of time on mindset, because, there's a reason my students, own 52 to 55,000 units. I think it's probably closer to 60,000, honestly, because so many we don't even know about. But the bottom line is there's a reason, because they take action. They push through the fear. And so we spend time on mindset. We spend time on, of course, I talked about the goals, but 80 to 90% of this is mindset.
Sure.
The technical stuff, I mean, I don't care what the vehicle is. I don't care if it's entrepreneurship, if it's investing in the stock market, if it's real estate, whatever it is, 80 to 90% of it is your mindset. So we spend time on that too.
So one thing I'm curious about, and I'm sure there are at least a handful of people at home right now thinking, 2-day online event, I can't squeeze that in. And plus, I learn better in person. When are the in-person
Here's
boot
what's
camps?
interesting. Here's what's interesting, though. On the end, at Sunday night, it's a Saturday and Sunday night at 7 p.m. when I finish, usually 90% of the people are still there.
Sure.
Because I keep it interesting, okay? It's total, but yeah, I do live events as well. I've got a live event coming up in Denver, July 28th, 29th, and 30th, I think. It's 3 days. I had, I think, 800 or 900 people in Orlando a couple months ago at a live event. It's my first live event since COVID.
Awesome. So yeah, that was really my question. I didn't mean to suggest that the 2-day online event. I mean, where else are you going to get 18 hours of training for $97?
It's very unusual for people to hang for 18 hours, and it just speaks to the type of content that I deliver. So it's again, you get tons of real estate content. I do 2 or 3 panels a day with several $1 billion represented by the panelists answering questions. I mean, it's very interactive. It's very motivational. It's very inspiring. And I don't have a drop-off, which is very unusual for an online forum like that. But listen, let me just say this to you. If you're listening, if you come and you participate and you don't freaking love it, you DM me on any social channel, I'll give you your money back. And I don't mean like it, I mean love it. And happy to give you your money back. And I've never had anyone take me up on that, but
yeah. I live and work and breathe this industry. I don't know anywhere else you can get close to 20 hours of training for $97 with a money back guarantee.
Right.
It's almost ridiculous, but yeah. My point was for the people who want to come do it in person. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah, those are more money because I got to rent the hotel room and stuff like that. It's not significant. I mean, if you do early bird, it's like $300. But you've been to my event.
Yeah, I have.
I mean, what did you think?
Well, one of the things I was going to point out is just like you said. You are who you surround yourself with, and if you're hanging out with your buddies at happy hour after work, who don't share your goals and your outlook or your interest in real estate, and you're trying to figure out, well, there's no meetups in my area, I don't know any other real estate investors. Hey, come online to run one of Rod's boot camps or attend one of his live events, because these are your people. This is your tribe. This is people who are interested in multifamily real estate, and these are the people that you want to be hanging out with.
Well, even and like you said, if there's no meetup in your area, for Christ's sake, start one. Yeah, I mean, invite people like me to come speak there. I mean, I've got students that, God, literally, I bet you my students have 50 meetups around the country now. And I've got students that have their own podcasts, numerous, like several award-winning ones. I've got students that have started big Facebook groups, even bigger than mine. I've got a Facebook group with 44,000 people. There's one of my students that has more than that. LinkedIn channels, YouTube channels. There's so many ways to create reach and connect now. There's no excuses. There's just literally no excuses. So
yeah, and I think that's another area where you bring value, because we, as a brokerage, as a property management company, we're more focused on the Tampa Bay area, but you have a much, much broader reach than us. You have students, you have events, you have coaching and mentoring all over the country.
Right.
And many of our listeners are from all over the country, but they're interested in investing in Florida. But that doesn't mean that they are not also interested in investing in Colorado or South Carolina or the Northeast or the Midwest or wherever they are. So that's another great point, that your training, your mentoring, your coaching, your events have a nationwide focus, and it's not like you're focused on any particular geographic area.
No, I mean, this business, the beautiful thing about multifamily real estate is you can do it anywhere. I mean, we've got assets in Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Ohio. I mean, and that's the beautiful thing about multifamily is you can pretty much do it anywhere, because you can hire third-party management like your company to manage it, regardless of the size. And, it's a beautiful thing. So
I would assume that another way for somebody, maybe they're planning to attend the boot camp, but they want to get a head start. They want to get to know what this is all about, get to know you. Let's talk a little bit about your books. You have a handful of them available on your website. Where should somebody start if they want to read one of your books?
I give them away for free. So just go to my website. It's realestatewithrod.com, connects to rodkhleif.com. Nobody can spell my name. So just go to Real Estate with Rod, and you'll see all my books are there. Even the bestseller, I've got a bestseller that you described the title, How to Create Lifetime Cash Flow. That one's free too. You just pay the shipping, and you get a whole bunch of cool stuff with it if you do that. It's like $7 or something, and you get the hard copy of it. But I've got a ton of books there that you can get PDFs of that are significant, like 200 pages in some cases for different parts of the business. And there's videos and articles and everything else there. It's all free. So, and my podcast, of course. Listen, if you're obviously a podcast listener, I hope you'll check out mine. I think you'll find value. Because I said we've had 12 million downloads. So 12
million people think it's good. So.
Right. So anyway, but so between the two websites and again, if you're listening to this, you obviously have an interest in this business. If you don't come spend a couple days with me for $97, listen, then you're not going to take action in this business respectfully.
Yeah,
I don't mean that as a slam, but seriously, because you need to know this. If you're going to invest in something, you need to know it. Even if you're only going to invest passively, for example, if you're just going to invest in somebody else's deal, why would you give your hard-earned money to someone if you don't know what it is? At least have a basic understanding. Sure. And like I said, I promise you'll be glad you came if you do.
You talk so much about one of the paths or keys to success is taking massive action. Well, even if you're not ready for massive action, spending $100 on a 2-day conference, that's tiny action. That's first step. And so don't be afraid to take that first step along your journey.
It's a time commitment. I get it. But you can pay a little nominal upcharge and get the recordings and watch them later too. But I'd encourage you to try to do it live. And again, if you do, and you've got kids over 12 years old, have them at least there for the first couple hours of the Saturday morning when I do goals, because then your spouse, it's just an incredible thing to do together and see how aligned you are on your goals, and to get you motivated and juiced. And I'd encourage you to do that if you do come, to have your family participate at least in the first couple hours.
Yeah, and that's another really, really powerful point, that if you are the husband or the wife and you have this burning desire to invest in real estate, if your other half isn't on board, or even worse, doesn't understand it, that's a tough row to hoe, as they say.
Yeah, if you can have them participate as much as possible, you need a supportive environment. And I talk about this actually at the boot camp, and I have someone come on and talk about that has gone through that with a spouse, and to talk about how they can get past that. Because if you don't have the support of your spouse, it's very hard to do it. And there's a lot of fear there. You've got to help your spouse in many cases push through that fear, and I can do that if they participate in the boot camp. But and like I say, it's one of the topics that comes up.
Sure, and like we said, one of the ways to punch down the wall of analysis paralysis is through education and understanding that there's nothing to be afraid of. And I would imagine that's very similar to having a spouse that's on the fence or pulling in the other direction. If you educate them and they really truly understand how powerful investing in real estate can be, education is the key to punching through that barrier.
What it does is education builds your competence. Once you have built your competence, it equates to confidence. And then once you have that confidence, then you actually have the ability to influence people to invest with you, work with you, want to be around you. And so that's kind of the progression, competence to confidence to your ability to influence.
Absolutely. So in addition, let's say someone has attended one of your boot camps, they've read your books, what's a logical next step? And I would assume that it's more direct coaching and mentoring.
If they want to pay for speed, if you want to pay for speed, I mean, you can do this on your own in say 5 to 7 years. You can make some things happen, and I've got students that have done it in less than a year. And I've got several that have retired in less than a couple years. And again, I've only been teaching 4 years. Okay, so. And I told you the numbers of my students, how many units they have, which again I'm just blown away by it on a consistent basis. But, I have a coaching program. I'd encourage you to come to my boot camp just to see what I'm about and see how I am, or at the very least listen to some of my podcasts. We don't accept everybody. I'm actually selective. And if you want to apply for it, I'd encourage you to have come to my boot camp, or at the very least listen to, maybe 10 episodes of my podcast. You really get a feel for who I am and what I'm about. But if you want to apply, you text the word CRUSH to 72345, and we'll help you crush it.
And you call your coaching and mentoring.
Those are my warriors.
Those are my warriors. Yeah. So what are they doing battle against?
It's really fear. Really,
Sure.
I think that's probably the biggest thing. They're battling fear and limiting beliefs. That's pretty much it. And then once you get your first deal, you become a warrior of the sword, and you get this awesome, real sword. It's cool.
I had no idea you gave out swords.
Oh yeah, really, really cool. And we're actually going to have a round table as well.
Awesome.
So that's going to be fun. Yeah.
Well, this has been incredible. Before I jump into a couple of closing questions, let's run down where do you sign up for the boot camp, and how do you get the discount code again real quick?
Yeah, so just text ROD to 72345, and then just remember Rod Friend, and that's how you'll get it. And if you have any trouble, just ping me on any social channel. My team and I will help you. But
yeah, and there's a website as well.
Yeah, it's called multifamilyvirtualbootcamp.com, and for the live event, it's just Multifamily Bootcamp. I'm live in-person event in Denver, it's multifamilybootcamp.com, and that will be website's live today, actually.
So not hard to find.
Not hard to find.
Use the code RODFRIEND, and because you are now a friend of Rod.
That's right. That's right.
So a couple of closing questions I'd like to ask everybody, and you obviously have a fascinating perspective on these. The first one is, where do you see the real estate market going in the next 2 to 5 years? We're normally talking about Florida when we ask this question, but you have a
2 to 5 years? Whew. Boy, I who knows? Honestly, if I knew that, I'd already be on the back of my yacht. I will tell you, I don't think we're going to have a contraction this year. After that, I think all bets are off. I mean, with this current administration, inflation is insane right now. So, that's a real problem. But then the flip side is there's nothing better that you can do than invest in real estate to offset inflation. So there's no better asset for you to acquire. But real estate goes through cycles, and we've been in summer for a long time. I believe we're in fall, and I think we're going to, at some point we're going to have a correction, and it could be a big one. And it's not something to fear, because with crisis comes opportunity. If I hadn't been hiding under a rock in 2009, I'd already be on the back of my yacht, but I was licking my wounds. So, I'm in a lot of cash right now in the event that happens, because cash is king in a contraction, or your ability to get cash, where you've got investors that aren't afraid to do business. But, I would, and I get people say, well, should I wait? If it's going to crash, should I wait? And I'm like, no. I mean, I just closed on a 300-unit asset. If the numbers make sense, then no. I would not be aggressive right now in your analysis. I'd be conservative. But there are deals out there. You have to kiss a lot of frogs right now. The market's crazy right now. It's frothing. It feels like 2006 and 2007 to me. But again, it's not something to fear. It's just something to be aware of. Don't be too aggressive. Don't do short-term debt, meaning you've got a balloon in 3 or 4 years. Don't do that, because that would be bad if the values drop and you can't refinance and you need to refinance or sell. But Ask me how I know. But, 2 to 5 years, all bets are off. Who knows? I honestly haven't got a clue.
I actually love that perspective
Yeah.
on the question because, of course, there's going to be a correction. Right. Of course, there's a cycle in the real estate market. And, there may not be a near-term crash coming, but nobody knows for sure. Look, just relax. It doesn't matter. It's nothing to fear. Right. Everybody knows the real estate market goes in cycles, and learn how to adapt to the cycles.
Let me say this, okay? The reason I crashed and burned in 2008 was it was my single family that pulled me down. My multifamily did just fine. It pulled back maybe 11%, but I could have easily survived if I hadn't cross-collateralized my multifamily apartment complexes with packages of houses to save, 50 basis points, a 0.5% interest. In my infinite wisdom, I thought I was doing something smart. Big mistake, because I'd still own those apartment complexes if I hadn't done that. So, that's why I started my podcast, was to give people the message. If you're going to buy and hold real estate, for God's sakes, do multifamily. It's so much safer. And so, that's the other thing. It's a much more resilient asset class. And I'll give you another example. Within 3 years of the crash, rents on multifamily had exceeded pre-crash levels. That's how fast it bounced back. Then it was a big crash. And I've been through several of these crashes, and it's not something you fear. It's just something you're aware of, and you just make sure you're protected.
Yeah, the statistics are out there, and you can obviously look them up and find them if you want to. But if you go back to the crash of 08, 09, the foreclosure rate on single-family assets was in the double digits in some cases, at least high single digits. The foreclosure rate on multifamily assets was well below 1%, less than 0.5%, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And that's why it's a very safe asset class.
That's
lenders, most lenders like it, and there's a lot of things to like about multifamily. So a final question, and we've covered so many possible answers to this, but for the aspiring real estate investor who's sitting in Cincinnati right now, and they want to buy some real estate in Florida, and they want to launch their real estate investing career, what's one tip, one trick, one word of wisdom you would share with them that you wish you had told yourself back when you were flipping burgers at Burger King?
Well, that's a big question. If you were just going to say one tip without me telling myself something, well, even back then, I would have gotten educated on multifamily sooner, for sure. And that's not, I know that sounds self-serving, but it's not. It really is the truth, because it took me 2,000 friggin' houses for me to get the memo I need to focus on multifamily, so I'm not a quick learner. But if I had just done multifamily, I would have, again, be on the back of my yacht right now.
No, but I do agree that education is the answer. And it's no secret, you're not the only place to get education. If you're
go to YouTube University if you don't want to spend $97, okay? Whatever. Just go do it.
There's no shortage of places to learn, and just educate yourself, and that takes away the fear, and it takes away so much of the risk. I think that's a great answer to the question. Well, Rod, I know you've got other places to be. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It was good to see you again, and appreciate you having me on.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Copeland Morgan Media Real Estate Podcast. As you can imagine, producing this great educational content takes a lot of effort and commitment on our part. We only ask one thing in return. Please subscribe to our podcast using your favorite podcast app or by visiting copelandmorgan.com/podcast. And remember, there's no greater compliment than referring us to a friend or colleague. Until next time, I'm Jeff Copeland.